Okay, so let's get on to a session I think many people are looking forward to. This morning we had Emily in conversation with Mark Thompson, which was obviously the journalism part of today's proceedings. And now we have Emily in conversation with Michael Reckhow from Facebook talking about part of the Silicon Valley conversation. So pretty sure this is going to be pretty exciting. So over to Emily and Michael.
No pressure. So I just want so Michael is the product manager. It seems like you should have a much bigger title like that, like Emperor or something, of Facebook Instant Articles. And one thing I will say is I thank you, and I have enormous respect for you coming to do this today, because we spoke to all platform companies. We said, please come and participate in the conversation. And as you will have heard this morning, journalism has a very particular view of the relationship between journalism and Silicon Valley, and it's very difficult to get platform companies to engage in public in that dialogue. And one of the things we want to hope to do with the research we're doing here is foster that forum. So when I said to Mike, when I met Michael at O&A and we talked about instant articles, I said, this is actually really great and interesting. Please come and talk about it. And he was like, okay.
Yeah.
So
I'm happy to be here. I love the panels this morning were great, and we look for these opportunities to engage directly with the industry, with people who think and talk about the industry. And that's one of the most important parts of my job and what we do. So thanks for giving us the opportunity.
No, not at all. And as I say, it's actually a short session, this, because we've got a lot to get through this afternoon. But Michael has been around all day. He's very kindly said he's nobly having a drink this after the session. So come and find him. He really does want to meet people who are students, practitioners in newsrooms, researchers, anyone who has a question. So Facebook Instant Articles, which we've talked about a lot. In the style of the Mark Thompson conversation, you're also going to show us like a brief intro, because probably the best way to demonstrate this is by showing.
Yeah.
How many people here know exactly what Facebook Instant Articles are and what they do? And how many people are a little bit in the dark and intrigued and would like to see more?
All right.
Those people who haven't put their hands up, I know that you do. Just talk to us a little bit about what the product actually is and what it does.
Yeah, so first off, for readers, Instant Articles is a way when you're in Facebook, in your news feed, to read an article that loads instantly and has a lot of great interactive features that bring the story to life that you're seeing behind me, like autoplay video, like photos that load with high resolution and you can tilt your phone to pan around, like autoplay audio, and like interactive maps. So as a reader, you can instantly tell the difference as it loads immediately, and then you can tell the storytelling capabilities that publishers are taking advantage of go way beyond what you're used to on a mobile phone. The other side of this is for publishers, and Instant Articles is a platform for publishers to distribute their news on Facebook. And so they provide a feed of their articles that then get rendered in this instant format, but also they get to use these capabilities. And when we talk to publishers, they're really excited about how they can use autoplay video to bring their stories to life in new ways. And that's just the beginning. We're really excited to see how we can work together with publishers. They provide a lot of these ideas for how to develop these types of features. And we think we're going to be able to bring a lot of additional features that enhance these capabilities to mobile phones.
So you've got, for instance, I don't know, you got to talk about spherical video, because I know that's happening, which is that a feature you're releasing today?
Well, so spherical video, for those of you who don't know, is the ability when you're looking and watching a video to be able to look around a scene. So it's a video that doesn't just point one direction, it points in all directions, and you can use your phone to look around it or use maybe VR goggles. And that's just an example of a new storytelling capability that can be used in many different ways. It can bring you into a scene. It can capture a scene where you don't know exactly what's going to happen when, and you can just capture everything around you. And that's one of the things that we think these new capabilities can offer. And it's all about how you use them. If you just put a spherical video in a place in front of like a news conference, that's not going to be very interesting, or even a debate. But there are some times where it can be amazing. There were some great examples of publishers using this to show a scene of, in a war scene where there's things happening all around you, it can bring you right into that story.
Well, I think, as I say, Rainey Aronson and PBS Frontline, they're one of the, with the film they made with the Tower Centre for VR is actually also kind of rendering in spherical video. So it's a kind of, this is not just about Star Wars and movies, it's about serious storytelling. Yeah. So let's sort of just get through a couple of the things which have happened recently, which everybody is talking about. So everybody this week is talking about, what's happened to our Facebook traffic for the publishers. They're saying this is direct referrals, down 30%, etc. I mean, that's not necessarily your part of the universe. But is there anything you can tell us about that, or when those figures come out? They have a really dynamic effect, she says, trying to make it sound positive, among publishers. And sometimes they're very frustrated, or not frustrated, just scared about what the hell's happening.
Yeah, and that's completely understandable. People who are looking to Facebook as a traffic driver, of course, are going to look at that data. We looked at that data because it matters a lot to us. And what we saw is that traffic is not down from the beginning of the year. That data, I think what it looked at was looking at the desktop. And I mean, how many of you are using a desktop right now? I think there are a few. Everyone has their phones, and most people are using their phones on Facebook and to read news. And if you don't look at phones to look at news data, you're not looking at the whole story. And so it's really important that you look at all of that data. Now, that being said, and a lot of people have talked about this today, there is increasing competition for everyone's eyeballs. And so that means that it's not the sort of the Wild West where the first people there are going to be able to grab all the traffic. Now you have to capture people's attention. And what we're going to see as we move forward is some publishers, like Mark Thompson mentioned this morning, the Times is doing incredibly and incredibly on Facebook. And they're doing a great job by putting out really quality journalism and growing their traffic. And that's something that you have to really put a lot of work into, and those who are doing that are growing their traffic.
So the cynical journalistic view of this is we have to make a decision that we don't really want to make, which is we have to decide how much control we're going to give up. We've seen the Washington Post say, have it all, have all of our articles. We've had some publishers saying, we'll participate with this, but a few articles. What are the advantages? Because two questions, does one size fit all in this universe? And what's the excuse me, what's the optimal use for a publisher?
Sure. So I think Mark Thompson actually laid it out in an interesting way when you asked him, well, is this a model everyone should use? And his answer was no, there are different models. And we spent a lot of time talking to publishers, and we hear, I'd say, 3 different models in terms of what they're looking to do. One is some publishers are going really broad reach, broad distribution. They want to reach, now with phones you can reach 1 billion people. That's one model. Another model is some publishers say, you know what, there's a niche. I have my local audience. I have an audience that cares about one particular thing. I'm going to reach them really deeply. And then there are some publications that are doing both. And I think the New York Times is a great example. They're trying to reach 1 billion people, and they're using Facebook and instant articles as a way to do that. And they're building a destination site that feeds off of that reach. So they use that broad audience to grow their dedicated audience. And so when you look at different ways that publishers are using Facebook and using instant articles, you see that they're using it in a way that meets those goals that they have. And what we're building as a platform is a platform that can serve all 3 types of those publishers. So we can serve publishers who want to reach a broad audience. We can serve publishers who want to identify their best customers, and things we're doing in instant articles, for example, to do that are you can, in every New York Times article, you can click and enter your email address and sign up for an email list. And that gets you to get a daily relationship directly with the Times. And so we're seeing publishers use the products that we build for those different goals that they have.
Right. So I'm going to ask you a tricky question, which I haven't given you any foresight of, which is, so if you were a publisher, so often publishers will tell you what they would do if they were Facebook. But if you were a publisher, what would you do? What would you, how do technologists and people who really see the future more clearly than often publishing companies do, how would you be thinking about it if you had a newsroom full of journalists producing articles?
You know, the way we look at it, so I spend a lot of time going around to publishers. I've logged a lot of airline miles. I've spent a lot of time in Manhattan going to different offices to understand what needs are. And so what we go there and we ask them, what are your needs? What are you looking for out of Facebook? What are you looking for out of platform? And that's where it starts. I mean, we can think of products to serve that, and we view publishers as our customers that we want to serve with those products, but it has to start with actually the publishers identifying their needs. And Mark Thompson mentioned and identified what their goals are. They want to have someone read one New York Times article and then read their second and their third and become an engaged reader. And we heard that actually from the Times, and now we're working with them really closely to understand, well, how can we help them? And Facebook has a lot of great capabilities to convert someone from reading and seeing New York Times for the first time to seeing multiple things. And so, we don't go in and actually tell publishers really anything. What we tell them is we want to hear from you what your goals are, and then we'll build products.
Yes, well, that's very wise, because publishers do not like being told anything, in my limited experience of them. But just so we're talking about the capabilities and types of use. Obviously, when instant articles were first released, you had a small category, a small group of partners, so people like Nat Geo, people like the New York Times, etc. A lot of what I hear is that, so the parts of the market that really need this might be niche publishers, they might be local. So local publishers have been sort of decimated by the idea of not being able to reach scale on the web. Can instant articles actually create, or will it create, a viable business model for those types of publishers? Or is this really only ever going to suit people who really need scale?
That's a great question. So our goal is to open instant articles and all of our products to any publisher who wants to use them. And we're starting very small because we want to get this right. And the way we get this right is we spend time directly talking to the people using the product, hear their feedback, and make it better. But we do want to open this up. And so if you think about local newspapers, and we're starting to work with some smaller publications, and when you get to Gannett, working with their network, really starting to understand that set of needs. And their goals are to build probably a local focused audience, but they need to get their stories out and engage with everyone in a metropolitan area, and then they may be trying to drive subscriptions or build. A lot of local news companies have apps that deliver a lot of value to people. And so we want to serve a publisher like that with helping them to reach everyone in their metro area, and then upsell those people onto installing an app that gets you onto their home screen, get an email subscription going. These things, these publishers are going to likely work on a dual model where they want to reach a lot of people and build direct relationships. And so as Facebook, we want to serve both of those needs.
Well, one of the things that actually no platform company has really cracked yet is the subscription model. So just in terms of, when we think about where is this going, is that at the moment this is all kind of based on a lack of latency, a lack of friction, and efficiency for people getting articles. Can you see a point at which it might also have a kind of a payment mechanism attached to it?
One of the things that you think about with subscriptions, and that's a really important business model, is that I'm a subscriber of the New York Times, and so I end up paying hundreds of dollars every year to get that really quality journalism that they produce. And if I'm paying that much, I want to have a place where I can go and tap. And so it's on my first home screen. I have a New York Times icon. I can tap on that, and I get that value out of it. And that's why I subscribe. And so, and Mark talked about this morning, but we need to, as an industry, be building this pipeline to subscribers for publications that are taking that model. And it's not for everyone, but for the ones that are, the model is, and you take the New York Times as an example, you used to be able to reach 10 million people in the metro area as the Times. That was your potential subscriber base. And so you tried to saturate that market. But now they have the opportunity to reach 1 billion people around the world. Now, of course, not all of those people are going to be subscribers. Maybe a lot of them will, who knows how many. But what your goal is with that 1 billion people is to find the ones who are going to get that daily value, like me, and who want to install that app on their home screen and identify them and bring them in to that deep engagement. And so the value of subscriptions is not necessarily like you subscribe and then you get that on Facebook. That's actually value you get from going to the Times. But what we can do and what we can help to provide for the Times is a pipeline and an ability to attract those readers.
And when we're sort of talking about other business development opportunities, one thing we've sort of spoken about before is just that idea that you don't now need to have huge publishing infrastructure. Excuse me, it's the cold. I'm going to end up with pneumonia today. You don't need, so two things. First of all, when Facebook actually hosts an instant article, as you said before, it still has to have a content management system. It still has to basically, be publishing somewhere else. But is there an opportunity now to experiment with social platforms, whether it's Snapchat, whether it's Facebook instant articles, in a way which means that you can go into new verticals or new markets without the paraphernalia of a whole publishing?
Yeah, one of the exciting ideas that we've talked about with some of the publishers we're working with already is, I mentioned that opportunity of reaching 1 billion people around the world. And that's a big expansion opportunity, but it also presents challenges. How do you get staff over there to do the incredible journalism that your brand is known for, so you maintain that high level? How do you get an ad sales team over there? How do you build customer relationships? All those pieces. And so publishers have actually come to us and said, you know what? When we're thinking about instant articles, one of the opportunities is this could enable us to enter the Indian market or the Latin American market earlier than we had projected, because we can go there and we have to nail the editorial. We can't sacrifice that. But we might be able to enter the market without our own ad sales team. We can start by using another service to do ad sales. And then once we get up to a critical mass, we can grow our ad sales team. We can grow other parts of the business. And so that, I think, is a really interesting challenge, and one of the ones that I'm interested in terms of the students here studying, like, how do you think about a journalism enterprise that now has the opportunity to have this global scope? How does that change how you think about your markets, your customers, and where you put your resources?
So that leads us on to a more sort of a more dark or difficult question, which is, we have people who are already publishing around the world and using Facebook for their primary outlet in places like Bangladesh, etc., where we've seen that publishing, and we know this as journalists, that publishing often has a very high cost attached to it. Now, you're the guy who's making the articles kind of work, but what is kind of Facebook's view, or how does your team think about the kind of unintended consequences of that publication, or maybe the intended, which is upsetting governments, take the product down, don't make this available. How much more of that are you having to think about than perhaps you did when you started this enterprise, and how much more do you think you're going to have to think about it in the future?
Yep, so we understand that our role in hosting news content needs to be taken seriously. And that's where we engage with a lot of dialogue. One of the most common discussions that I have when I go into newsrooms or go and talk to publications is, how can we make sure that we get our stories out everywhere? And that's something that we take seriously, and we have a constant dialogue with publishers where we want to understand, are there any ways that Facebook can empower them to do that? And also, are there ways that Facebook needs to play a greater role? And so that's one of the things that has opened up that dialogue. And I think it's an ongoing dialogue, but it's one that we're regularly engaged with publishers, because it matters a lot to them and to our readers who want to get access to all of that information.
And how has kind of the engineering process of this changed through, sorry, I am going to actually die of some sort of, sorry. How has it changed, when you look at all the product groups in Facebook, one of the interesting things about journalism is how it grew up as completely separate to commerce. The role is you support democracy by commenting on all of these things, standing separately from it. So within Facebook, where you have those groups that are now working with journalists and publishers, are you as engineers taking on any of those kind of sort of attributes at all? It's mentioned earlier this morning that the White House, there's the CTO's comment earlier on this week that all engineering students now should be taught ethics. It's a huge thing, etc. How is that actually? Is it changing the culture inside Facebook to be exposed to these things?
It can't help but rub off. I spend my days working side by side with some great journalists who work at Facebook. I spend weeks like this out talking to journalists. And I work on news at Facebook because I believe that Facebook can play a great role in helping people to discover news and to learn about the stories that matter to them. Just a few weeks ago, I listened to This American Life story about school desegregation that I thought was really interesting, and in part because my mom has been a champion of that in Durham, North Carolina. And so I shared that out to my friends, and I've never gotten as much response as I did sharing that. And the reason was because I told the story about not only this was a really great piece of journalism, but it was something that mattered to me. It was something I cared about. And the response from my friends and the number of people who read that story and listened to it, the audio version, was just incredible. And I think it told me that this is the role that we need to play. We can help to get these stories that matter, and that social fabric helps to do that.
So that enters a sort of a more difficult question again, and it's about, some of this is about engineering and some of it is about kind of editorial and where the two meet, which is, one of the problems with Facebook newsfeed right back in the early days was you would get recommended articles that were made up. So you're now becoming the kind of pipeline where you want better user experience, where you want to engage more people around more articles. How do you account for, or what's the, so you say we're going to open these tools up. Is there going to be like a whitelist, blacklist of people who could have access to, how do you stop the malware of instant articles, I guess, which is, mendacious or bad publishers?
Yeah, so all of Facebook lives on the trust of the connections that you make, the people you follow, the pages you follow. And so the stories that you see in newsfeed actually don't change with something like instant articles. You still see the same stories. And we've invested a lot over the last few years to do things that help to reduce the flow of inaccurate information. There's a lot of suggestions that come up. If you notice, if you read a story that has been debunked, you'll often see right afterwards a suggested story that's actually the real story. And we've invested in helping to bring that to light. And so instant articles, in effect, is aimed at just solving the user experience problem. But as Facebook, we still lean on the trust of the network, the people you follow, and making sure that you're getting news from people and sources that you trust, because you can control those sources.
Do you think, do you personally think much about that as this is quite a powerful role that I'm now occupying, how we change this product really, affects how 40% of American adults and, X% around the world will encounter news, or is that just something that you can't allow to kind of impinge on your consciousness?
No, we take that seriously. Again, that's why I work at Facebook in News, is because I care about providing a great experience for people in terms of what they discover. And also, I love working with the media industry to serve those needs and to talk to the publishers that we work with about how we can serve them better. And so that's the job. That's what I'm here to do, and that's what my team is here to do. And so the way that we do that is we think of our readers as the customers that we want to serve with great news, great experience. And then with publishers, we also treat them as customers. And that's one thing, that's the language that we use, because I think that explains the role that we play, that we hear needs in terms of what publishers want out of the platform. We build product in a very collaborative way. Like with instant articles, we started, our first conversation with publishers was in August of last year. We launched the product in May of this year. So we were spending almost a full year talking to publishers. And that's why, these things leak, before we launch them. And that's actually, that's a product of the process, that we want to have a collaborative development process. This isn't one where we build something and we toss it over the wall. We're spending time with publishers all throughout the time that we're developing these ideas to make sure that we get them right. Because we can't get them right in a vacuum, and that's the wrong way to build a product. you have to build a product like that talking to your customers.
So you now know probably more than almost anybody else in the whole of journalism about how people consume and interact with news. And obviously one of the kind of like big questions for Facebook has always been, can we have our data? Can we have our data is one thing. So there's like, I know that you, I think I'm right in saying that publishers actually get their data from there.
Well, that was one of the things, I mentioned that collaboration with publishers, but what does that lead to? Well, we heard from publishers when I came out to New York and met with a dozen publishers about instant articles last August. They said, you know what, the number one thing that matters is ComScore. And ComScore attribution, getting the credit for the traffic that we have matters a lot. And so we went and talked to ComScore. I spent a lot of time with ComScore this winter. And we did a deal with them where we can make sure that publishers get that ComScore credit because we know that data matters. And we also support third-party tracking like Google Analytics and Omniture and Chartbeat and Parsley. I know some people from those places are here and we work directly with them. So we heard that, and that's the only way. If we had just built the product, we maybe wouldn't have known that until we launched it, and then we would have had to go and fix it and so on. We want to get as many things right at the start by talking to publishers. Now, that doesn't mean we'll get everything right. And so with Instant Articles, we launched a V1 in May. What we're continuing to iterate on, and we've added a bunch of features for publishers this fall already, and we're going to continue to add things.
What are you seeing? Are you seeing anything that you can share with us or tell us about which is surprising you about how people are reading or consuming news, in general, without?
Yeah, I think, and we have a slide, I think the last slide there, with the cartoons. So this was a great one. So one of the things that people are talking about a lot is how can articles not just be a monolithic thing in the digital world, but can individual pieces break out? And one of the things we've enabled with Instant Articles is you can like and comment on photos inside the article, and then your friends see that you liked and commented on those. They can engage with them. They can go and view the article. And the Washington Post did these incredible editorial cartoons during the Benghazi hearings. And you can see each one of them got a bunch of engagement inside the article. So people are tapping like and comment inside the instant article. And even the Washington Post jumped in and commented on one of their cartoons that they found sort of they used an emoticon sticker that sort of looked like one of the cartoons that they drew. And it was a great way to get in that discussion. And so that's one of the most surprising things. When we were building this product, I had no idea whether people would do this. And it's just really exciting to see that they are, and we're going to invest in making this an even better experience.
And when it comes to sort of text versus stills versus video, we hear a lot about, it's all about video now. Is it really all about video? Is that?
So video is the killer app inside Instant Articles, and the publishers who are using video are doing really great in that they are mixing together, it's really hard to tell a full story in a video, it's expensive and so on, but you can use your great video and supplement it with photos, with text, with the rest of the story. And autoplay video brings the video up to being a first-class citizen. It's not something that you hope someone will tap on, or maybe they'll go and watch this after they read the article. It's a part of the article. And so we're really excited for how a new creative tool like that can allow people to use video and use storytelling like that in a new way.
Might you reconsider things like autoplay? So autoplay's had a ton of coverage just because of graphic content, and also because of the way that views are counted, et cetera, et cetera. As user experience, autoplay's not that great, and yet it's a kind of feature of.
So one of the things in Instant Articles is publishers, and we started with this idea of publisher control. Publishers can control whether a video autoplays or not. And the reason is that there are certain videos that actually work well with autoplay, but there's some, whether it's graphic content, whether it is something that actually you want someone to get ready for, lean back, and then watch, you might not want to have the video start playing immediately. And so publishers can set in a video whether that autoplays or not. And Instant Articles is designed to be a very customizable, flexible canvas for people to use the right thing to tell the right story. It's not like this is the format that all stories should be told in, is they will be vertical in this and this and this. It is a flexible canvas where you can do the right thing by the story you're trying to tell.
So I'm having red flags waved at me saying we're up to time, but I just wanted to ask you kind of like one more question, which is about when you go into, I've spoken to a lot of people at Facebook, a lot of people in platform companies, I am a journalist. There is that kind of conception of sort of two cultures, etc. you know, there's a narrative that comes out of some of this that says, you know, hey, why don't you as journalistic organisations, I mean, not that you have said this, but I've heard this said, why don't journalistic organisations just stop with the trying to do technology, trying to employ good technologists, when they stop with the kind of the ad sales, strategy, look at these amazing kind of platforms, you know, we can never compete with the technical power of a Google or a Facebook. You know, we should just outsource all of that. What would you know, as an engineer, what do you think about that? When you go into newsrooms, what's the right role of technology within a news organization?
Yeah, so I go back to what is the goal of the organization? What are they trying to do? Are they trying to reach people with a broad audience? Well, there are certain platforms you can use to do that. Are you trying to engage a very specific audience, or are you trying to do both? And if you're, for an example, trying to do both, and you want to build a really dedicated app strategy where you get people to pay for a subscription to that app, of course you need to be building technology. Are you trying to understand how you get broad distribution on a platform? Well, technology can help you to do that with data, some of the things that have been talked about today. So I think it's a question of identifying the right tools to solve your original need, and that's again what we go into these meetings when we talk to publishers is first, what is your goal? What are you trying to serve? And we can identify what products and services you can use. But in this day and age, you are most likely going to want to really understand the data, understand the distribution, understand the monetization, and that will require using technology as one of your key tools. So we want to be there to help provide some solutions, and publishers are going to bring their own solutions.
Michael, you're a very brave man.
It's fun.
You are
Yeah.
around. As I say, you've promised to stick around
Yeah.
and have a drink later on.
Yeah.
They're a very friendly bunch, you can see, but they will ask you much tougher questions than I did. Michael Reckhow, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you.